every parent, hear me what I'm saying, I would suggest that every parent over the next couple of weeks, sit down with your son, sit down with your daughter, and read through the book of Proverbs. See, you don't need to be going through some parental journal on how to raise your children. The Bible is our journal. And the book of Proverbs is littered and loaded with all kinds of instructions on how to teach your child how to obey their parents. The central theme of the book of Proverbs is this. It wraps up in this. Hear, my son, your father's instructions. Do not forsake your mother's teaching. In other words, literally what it's saying, let me break it down for you young people. Literally what it's saying is, listen to what your mom and daddy has to say. You might think it don't mean much. You might think it don't mean much. You might think they don't know what they're talking about. You might think they're outdated. You might think that they're unfolded. But the reality is they've been where you're trying to go. They've done what you're trying to do. They forgot most time more than you will ever learn. They've already been there and done that. So you will save yourself a whole lot of heartache if you would just listen to what they've got to say. And that ain't just me talking. If you're sitting next to an older person, they'll tell you that, if they would have just listened to some of the stuff that mama tried to tell them, they would have had some of the bumps and bruises in life that they went through. You see, watch this. You got to understand something. And the reality is, and I'm going to give you this truth. Young people and your parents may not tell you, but pastor's going to tell you the truth. The truth is, your parents are not infallible. That means no parent is perfect. You were not born with a how-to book in your hand. And again, most of us that when parenting came to us, we wasn't ready for it. We just did the best we could to stand up to the plate and be responsible for the responsibility that life had brought us. But here we are. But you got to understand that although we're not infallible, although we're not perfect, watch this, but we are still the child's primary God-given authority and source of your training. That in other words, your daddy might not be perfect, your mama may not be perfect, but they are still the one that God gave to teach you the lessons of life that you need to learn. Watch this, let me give it to you. You got to understand something. He says here, my son, do not forget my teaching. Don't let your heart, but let your heart keep my commandments. He said, don't forget it. Don't abandon my instruction. You see, you got to understand something. I didn't understand this when I was your age, but you got to know something. That the only reasons parents try to teach you, try to steer you from folk, try to keep you on the right road is because of how much they love you. Because watch this, if they didn't love you, they wouldn't say nothing at all. They're just going to let you make a mess out of yourself. They're going to let you make a wreck out of your life. But you got to understand something. You are your mama and daddy's prized possession. You are a great investment. And you got some parents that will rightly tell you with unapologetically and unequivocally clear that I've invested too much in you to watch you ruin your life. Listen, he says here. He says, listen. He says, listen to my words. Come on, elbow some young person and tell them, just listen. Just listen. That's all. Just listen. He says here, and really, when you look even at Proverbs 4, and I hope I'm helping somebody, Proverbs 4 talks about how it's supposed to be a generational thing. He says, listen, what fathers are supposed to do is to teach your children what your father taught you. And I hear somebody saying, yeah, Rev, that might sound good, but my daddy wasn't around. My daddy ain't taught me nothing. Well, let me tell you something. If he wasn't around, he did teach you something. He taught you when you have children, you be around. Come on, talk to me, somebody. He taught you, you be a better father to your child than yours was to you. That's an easy lesson right there. So you got to understand, sometimes people can teach you on what to do, but then they can also teach you on what not to do. Listen, it says, listen, let me tell you something. Let me read this. Several years ago, Irma Bombeck, she printed a piece about having the meanest parents in all the world. And I wish I could take a poll of every young person in this room and say, how many of you think you have the meanest parents in the world? I won't take the poll because maybe your parents sit next to you. But believe what I tell you, there's some young person that's listening to me that says, Pastor, I got the meanest parents, the meanest mama, meanest daddy in the whole wide world. But she wrote a piece, and I want to read what she wrote. She says, I had the meanest parents in all the world. When I was 7 years old, they dared to spank me just because I told them I would not do what they asked me to do to help around the house. My friend next door never got spanked. He didn't have to help at home. He had nice parents. I had the meanest parents in all the world. I had to eat all of my broccoli and carrots before they would let me have dessert. My friend next door never had to eat vegetables. He had fast food brought in with burgers and shakes and brownies with all kinds of ice cream. I had the meanest parents. They made me go to church every Sunday as long as I lived under their roof. I sit there in that boring worship service. My friend next door could do as he pleased. He never went to church. Sunday was a fun day for him. I had the meanest parents in the world. They made me work for my allowance. I had to get a job helping an elderly old man with chores around the house. My friend next door never had to do anything, and he was given 4 times as much of allowance as I could ever earn. He had nice parents. I had the meanest parents. When I turned 16, they made me earn points before I could drive the family car. My friend next door was given a brand new luxury car. My folks bought me an old jalopy for me to get back and forth to school. But you'd think I'd drive that hunk of junk and park it beside those Jeeps and BMWs and Mercedes. My friend had it made, or so I thought. But when we reached age 30, I had a change in perspective. I had learned that my parents were not so mean after all. I was experiencing the pleasure of work, the reward of recreation, the strength of a healthy body, the bond of a strong marriage, the inward confidence that comes from the faith, and the wonderful supportive fellowship that comes from the church community as believers. She said, as for my friend, things were not going so well. He was not finding his niche in the workplace. Nothing seemed to satisfy him. He was having difficulty getting along with people who were not willing to do everything just as he thought he knew it ought to be. His marriage had not lasted even 2 years. His body is getting out of shape. He evidenced a cynical outlook without any undergirding from that comes from the assurance of faith. In other words, what she says, she came to the realization and that what I thought was the worst thing my my parents were doing for me, it turned out to make me the mother, the woman that I am today. What I'm saying, young people, you may not understand it now, you may not see it now, but you're going to get a point in your life, if God let you live, if God let your parents live, the way you're going to go to your parents and say, thank you for every time you said no. Thank you for every time you didn't let me run with the wrong crowd. Thank you for every time you told me that everybody who knocked on my door is not my friend. Thank you for every time you took off your belt and gave me some act right. Thank you for what you've done for me.